Chapter 3. There was a new atmosphere of cheerfulness and hope in Heorot Hall, now that Beowulf was there. The drinking and laughter continued until it was time for Hrothgar and his queen to leave the hall. Hrothgar knew that Grendel would come that night, and he wished the hero good luck.
This is the first time I have let anyone else defend Heorot Hall. Guard it well tonight, and be careful of the enemy.
God had given the Danes someone who could protect them from the demon. Beowulf left his armour with the soldier and told him to look after it well. Then he prepared for sleep, saying proudly,
"I will not use any weapons in the battle with Grendel. He is very strong, but with God's help, I will overcome him."
Beowulf lay down, and his Geats rested as well. No one expected that Beowulf would ever return to his own country, but God was preparing a victory for him. The Geats would win because of the strength of one man alone. Suddenly Grendel came out of the darkness. He opened the iron door of the hall and entered the great building. He was full of hate. Once inside, Grendel moved secretly and quickly past the guards who were asleep. Grendel thought he would kill many men that night, but his days of murder were coming to an end. Beowulf was watching the demon in the darkness. Suddenly the demon took hold of a man who was sleeping. He bit into the man's body. And the blood flowed everywhere. Then he moved towards Beowulf. Beowulf leapt up from his bed and began to wrestle with the demon. The demon struggled against the warrior, but Beowulf held on to him tightly. Grendel tried to escape, but he could not free himself from Beowulf's grasp. Man and demon were locked together in the fight, and the noise of their battle could be heard all over the hall. Suddenly, Grendel gave a great cry. It was the cry of the defeated. The man had beaten the demon. Beowulf did not want to let Grendel leave the hall alive. His men were awake now, and they rushed to help their hero with their swords. They did not know that the demon could not be hurt by any sword. He had magic against human weapons. Now Grendel began to weaken. Beowulf still held on to him, and the demon was in agony. The injuries that Beowulf gave him were terrible. He pulled the demon's arm and shoulder off. At last, the demon fled the hall. He disappeared into the darkness, but he was dying, and he knew it. The next morning, warriors came from everywhere to discuss the battle. They saw the traces of his blood on the ground outside the hall. They saw the place where the demon had dived into the water and drowned. His soul had gone to hell. The warriors praised Beowulf's courage. They said there was no braver man than him in the whole world. One of the king's minstrels began to compose a poem in honor of the Geat warrior. The poet told the story of Sigmund the dragon killer and compared Beowulf to that hero. King Hrothgar came into the hall with his queen, Wealhtheow. He looked at the remains of Grendel's arm and shoulder, and then he spoke the following words.
We must thank God for this victory. A little while ago, it seemed that this house would always run with the blood of Grendel's victims. But God brought Beowulf here, and Beowulf has achieved something that we Danes could not do.
He turned and spoke directly to the Geat hero.
I now think of you as if you were my son. I will give you all the wealth that you want. I hope that God will always protect you and reward you.
Now Beowulf replied to the king,
We have survived this great adventure. I wish, all the same, that you could have seen his body here in the hall. I wanted to use my strength to make him fall down, and then to squeeze the life out of him. He escaped me, however, and God allowed it to happen. The demon left his arm and shoulder here with me, and that was a heavy price to pay for his freedom. He will soon be dead because of that injury, if he is not dead already. Then he will go before God and receive judgment for his wickedness.
Anferth looked at the demon's arm and shoulder, and he was quiet. He could not criticize Beowulf for anything now. Chapter 4. King Hrothgar ordered his men to prepare here at Hall for a victory feast. Men and women worked hard together to remove the traces of the terrible struggle between Grendel and Beowulf from the building. Everything that had been damaged in the fight was renewed, and soon the hall looked splendid once more. On the night of the victory feast, there was great happiness here at Hall. The cup passed from hand to hand, and there was happiness and friendship. Hrothgar gave Beowulf a gold standard as a victory gift. He also gave him some armor, a helmet, and a sword. Then the king told his men to bring 8 horses into the hall. One of the horses was wearing the king's own saddle. Hrothgar gave these horses to Beowulf as well. There were also rewards for the other Geats. Every man who had been on Beowulf's boat received a valuable gift, and there was compensation for the Geat warrior that Grendel had killed. The harpists and musicians now came forward, and they played tunes and sang tales of heroes to please the king and his guests. The poet recited a poem about an old feud between the Frisians and the Danes. The poem told a bitter story of blood, betrayal, and revenge. Everyone listened to the recital with pleasure. Queen Wheelhetheo said to Hrothgar,
Drink to the Geats, my lord. Be generous to them, and enjoy their company. But think carefully about what you are doing. You have said that you think of Beowulf as if he were your son. Be sure you leave your kingdom to your own sons when you die. Remember your brother, Hrothulf. If you die before he does, he will look after Denmark for our children. He will treat them well.
The queen glanced over at her 2 sons, Hrethric and Hrothmund. Beowulf was sitting happily between the 2 brothers. There were more gifts for Beowulf: gold, rings, and a magnificent torque. The queen spoke to Beowulf.
Wear this torque for luck, and also this armor. I wish you luck throughout your life. Treat my sons kindly, because here in Denmark, friends are loyal to each other.
The feast continued. The warriors were drinking wine, and none of them knew the terrible things the future was bringing them. At last the feast came to an end, and guards were posted at the hall. Everyone prepared to sleep, but they kept their armor and their weapons close to them. That was the custom. Beowulf was not in the hall. He had been given a bedchamber away from the other warriors. While everybody slept, something horrible entered the hall in the darkness. Suddenly the hall was full of noise and shouting, and the warriors woke up. There was a moment's confusion. People did not know what was happening. Then they understood. Grendel's mother was determined to avenge her son's death. She had already killed one warrior while everybody was sleeping. She had taken the body to her hiding place outside the hall. The dead man was called Ishara, and he had been one of the king's best friends. The Danes reached for their swords as quickly as they could. Now the demon grabbed her son's arm and shoulder and ran from the hall. In a few moments, Beowulf came running into the hall with his men. Hrothgar spoke to him.
Suffering has come back. Ishara is dead. He was my best friend and always fought alongside me in our battles. This monster came in and murdered him. She must have decided to avenge Grendel's death. I don't know where she is hiding, but I have heard some stories from some of the lords who live a long way from the hall. They say that people saw two of these monsters. One of them looked like a man. That was Grendel, whom you killed. The other one looked like a woman. That must be his mother. There is a strange place a few miles from here where the forest comes down to a mere. It is a forbidding place because the water burns. An animal that is being hunted will turn to face the hounds rather than dive into that water. You must go there, Beowulf, and see if you can find the demon.
Chapter 5. Beowulf replied to Hrothgar's words.
Do not be sad, sir. It is better to avenge a friend's death than to cry over it. Let's go after this monster together. She won't escape, I promise you.
Hrothgar was cheered by Beowulf's words. He called for his horse immediately, and the king left the hall with Beowulf and some warriors. They rode into the forest, where they could see the tracks of the monster. They followed the trail until they came to the part of the forest where the mere was. Then they saw Ishara's head lying on the ground in front of them. The warriors looked around them. They saw monsters sitting on the cliffs above them. Then they looked down at the water and saw that it was full of snakes. Beowulf shot an arrow at one of the snakes, and they watched the horrible animal die in the water. Some of the warriors pulled the snake's body to the land. Beowulf put on his armor. This would keep him safe from the monster when he fought it. He put on his helmet. Then he took a wonderful sword that had been given to him by Unferth. The sword was called Hrunting. No one who used that sword had ever been defeated. Unferth's gift of the sword to Beowulf proved that he was afraid to pursue the monster himself. When he was ready, Beowulf spoke to the king again.
Remember what you promised me earlier, my lord. If I am killed in this battle, look after my men for me, and send the gifts you have given me to Higelac. If I die, I want Unferth to have my own sword. The one he gave me, I am taking with me to the battle.
Then Beowulf dived into the foul water. He swam down for nearly a whole day before he could see the bottom. The monster was immediately aware that a human being was coming towards her. She swam up and caught hold of Beowulf. Then she dragged the warrior down to the bottom. She took Beowulf to her court, holding on to him so tightly that he could not use his weapons against her. When they arrived at the court, Beowulf saw a great crowd of sea monsters. They swam towards him and attacked him. Beowulf sprang free from the monster and raised his sword. He brought the sword down on the monster's head, but nothing happened. The magic sword failed him. Beowulf threw it away in disgust. The warrior knew that he would have to fight the monster with his own strength. He seized her shoulder and threw her to the ground. Grendel's mother got up quickly and caught hold of him again. Beowulf lost his balance and fell. The monster jumped on top of him and pulled out a knife. She tried to stab him, but Beowulf's armor was strong. It saved him from harm. Now God gave Beowulf the victory. He rose to his feet and grabbed a sword that he saw in the monster's armory. It was a huge sword that no other man could lift. Beowulf picked it up and swung it at Grendel's mother. The sword struck her on the neck. She fell to the floor. Beowulf cut off her head.